recording,
Recording in progress.
and I am going to mute myself.
Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I would like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of March 2nd, 2022. In accordance with the Governor's Healthy Washington guidelines and to protect city employees and members of the public from transmission of COVID-19, the City Council is conducting our weekly council meeting remotely. We are preparing to reopen the council chambers to the public meetings when public health considerations indicate it is safe to do so. There are several ways in which you can engage with the council and participate in our meetings. To watch or participate in our remote meeting, you may watch council meetings live on Comcast Channel 21 or Frontier Channel 29. You may watch live online at www.everettwa.gov/citycouncil, where you may also watch past meetings. You may call in to listen to the live meeting at any point by dialing 425-616-3920. Conference ID is 724-887-726#. You may find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you go to the link that says register here to provide comment via Zoom, you'll need to fill out the form completely if you wish to provide public comment at any future meeting. After the public comment form is submitted, you will receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Participants must submit this form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link and phone number to speak, but may still participate that day of the meeting by submitting comments in writing to council@everettwa.gov. For assistance with public comment, please contact the council office at 425-257-8703 or email Deb Williams at dwilliams@everettwa.gov. Please note that we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Outside of our meetings, members of the public are always welcome to contact council members or provide comments or concerns on any matter via email at council@everettwa.gov or by calling the City Council office. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin?
Here.
Councilmember Ryan?
Here.
Councilmember Schwab?
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Here.
Councilmember Fossey?
Here.
Councilmember Toohey?
Here.
Councilmember Vogely?
Here.
President Stonecipher?
Here. I would like to ask Councilmember Toohey to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, I will. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I would like to ask Councilmember Ryan to please read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We acknowledge the original inhabitants of this land, the Hope's people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. We'll move to approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of February 23rd, 2022?
Councilmember Toohey moves the motion to accept the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
Councilmember Ryan seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Are there any questions or comments? If so, unmute yourself and make yourself known. Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
President Stone Cipher.
Yes. Thank you. And we'll move now to Mayor Franklin's comments. Good evening, Mayor.
Yeah, good evening, President Stone Cipher and council members. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the horrors against Ukraine that are ongoing right now, and our community members whose friends and families have directly experienced this violence and devastation. I've heard truly tragic stories from some of our city team members who are hearing from their families at home, and I've also heard some inspiring stories of the strength and resilience of the Ukrainian family members and friends who are doing whatever necessary to protect their loved ones. We have an especially strong Ukrainian community here in Everett, and I'd like all our Ukrainian neighbors to know my heart is with you. This is a dark and terrifying time. We want you to know that although we can only imagine the fear and grief you're experiencing, we stand in solidarity with you, and we'll do whatever we can as a community to support you. I encourage all of us to keep our Ukrainian community members in your thoughts and prayers, and I have no further comments this evening. Thank you, President Stone Cipher.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll move to council comments and liaison reports, starting with Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's been a busy week. I had an opportunity in last council meeting. I had mentioned that I was going to start working on reaching out to administration, talk about ways that, as chair of the Economic and Cultural Vitality Committee, I can work on incorporating ARPA discussions either into the committee or through the committee or some fashion. So I had a chance to meet with Deputy Mayor Nick Harper, and he was helpful with a preliminary overview of ARPA and further going into the document that they had provided a couple weeks ago. And it was a really quick discussion. So there's more to come on this, but just wanted to pass along that update. I attended the Council of Neighborhoods meeting, which is always really exciting to see all the folks from across the city. April Hines with Public Works shared more about the stormwater management plan, and there's a draft plan that is out and on the website, and there's an opportunity for the public to provide input on the draft plan, and input is due by March 18th. The Public Works Department is also doing the Raid and Garden rebate program, so that's up and running again this year. And they also shared that there's family gardening kits available at the public library, which I just think is adorable. And then I provided an update to the Council of Neighborhoods with a mention of, for some of the new the neighborhood associations that are restarting meeting up again here in 2022. I gave a friendly reminder that with districts, their district representative will be their liaison for the next 4 years. And there was a question about the role of at-large seats for attending neighborhood association meetings and how that would work. And so I shared that I'd bring that back to council for a mention of that. And I felt like it was a good time to revisit discussion from the retreat about the roles and responsibilities of districted seats versus at-large seats when it comes to interacting with the public, either through neighborhood meetings or constituent relations and responses or otherwise. I just think it's really important to establish roles and responsibility for accountability and for transparency, and just to cultivate expectations from the public. So it's definitely not a discussion to get into tonight, because I know nobody's prepared for it, but I did want to bring it forward again just as a mention and to put it on the ticker for in the future. I had a chance to attend the Beverly Park Pinehurst meeting with Councilmember Zarlingo and give a brief presentation about the proposed red light camera ordinance that will be coming through soon, and ask for input on that. And then there was an update from Lindsay Rowe at the Everett Animal Shelter, and she shared a presentation and I mentioned that they are looking for foster homes for foster dogs, particularly senior dogs and dogs with special needs. So if folks have a space in their home and their heart for pets like that, to go ahead and reach out to the animal shelter. On March 21st, they're going to be hosting an income qualified spay and neuter clinic, and they also have ongoing low-cost vaccinations that are available for the public as well for low-income families that qualify. So they also share that they're starting their in-person volunteer shifts, so keep your eyes peeled for those opportunities to sign up. And also wanted to share happy Women's History Month, or Women's Herstory Month, as I like to call it. And so just an opportunity to celebrate all the people who identify as women in our lives. So that concludes my remarks for tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll just comment on your question about some council procedures for communication with neighborhood associations and others in the community. We are bringing forward the discussion of council procedures. We will be circulating a draft document. And I believe, I can't believe I've forgotten already. I believe it's on for next week. It's either next week or the one following we don't have a meeting. So we are going to be discussing it next week. So you'll see that coming through your mailbox, and we can have that conversation next week. We will go next to Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, I just want to echo what the mayor's comments were. Thank you. It's impacting some very, very close friends and family of mine. No other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Zarlingo.
Last week, I attended the second meeting of the Sound Transit Elected Leadership Group. They'll be advising the Sound Transit Board of Directors. And if you've driven to Seattle, you've seen all the construction progressing to Linwood from the recently opened Northgate station. Linwood service will be beginning in 2024. That's 8.5 miles and 4 stations. The Everett Link extension is after that. That'll be over 16 miles and either 6 or 7 stations and a large operations and maintenance facility for the whole north end that'll employ 400 to 500 people. So it's the largest project in the Sound Transit system, and I thought I'd give a brief summary of that so people will know what's going on this large scale effort. The service is unfortunately years away in terms of the light rail service, but planning for such a large and impactful project is a long-term process. The public voted approval on the main elements and the general route and station locations, and now the specifics will be determined. That's part of the job of the elected leadership group, digging into the details and the trade-offs to provide a full set of recommendations to the Sound Transit Board. I've been going through some of the briefings from their technical staff, asking lots of questions, and have begun going through public comments and recommendations from businesses, property owners, individuals, and other entities. The next meeting of this elected leadership group will be in April. The process is expected to take about a year. There's an online open house and community outreach team at Everett Link at soundtransit.org, or just search on Sound Transit Everett Link. And I myself welcome comments, especially from Everett community members. It's important to keep in mind that an essential component of a successful and efficient light rail system is the connection to the rest of our transit system, serving the city and the county. And our team will be working with people such as the experts at Everett Transit and Community Transit to make this the best it can be. So for anybody who's viewing this, and if you're interested in the future and making that work out well, now's a great time to provide some feedback. And thank you. That's all I had for tonight.
Thank you. We'll go next to Councilmember Fossey.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention that I appreciate the mayor's comments and sentiments shared. That's really important. This last week, I was able to attend Snohomish County tomorrow, and we covered a few things there, like the regional transportation plan, and it was very informative. I was also able to attend the Economic Alliance, Snohomish County's Impacts and Elements of Economic Development meeting, which was also very interesting. And I wanted to make note that March 1st was actually the Nuclear Victims Remembrance Day. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that one, the day actually honors victims and survivors of nuclear testing done on the Marshall Islands. And I know some of you have heard me speak about the Marshallese neighbors before, but from 46 to 58, the US had secretly conducted about 67 nuclear tests on the Marshall Islands, and that equates to about 1.5 Hiroshima bombs a day, every day for 6 years, for like quantity perspective. And I know the biggest bomb, I'm told, was 1,000 times the power of the Hiroshima bomb, and as far as I know, the biggest bomb ever detonated by the US. And I bring this up because there are not many places in the US that have as significant populations as we are lucky to have here in the Puget Sound, with nearly 10,000 of our neighbors being Marshallese. And I know specifically in my neighborhood, our elementary school a couple years ago, when we asked, Marshallese was the second most common non-English language spoken at home. And I don't know what the process necessarily is for recognizing those types of holidays and days, but that's something that I think that we should maybe take into consideration for next year on March 1st. So if somebody could maybe share what the process might be for following up on something like that.
Mary, I'm happy to work with the team. I think if we're just recognizing a holiday, which is really an important act, I think that's a fairly simple process to just, acknowledge this important holiday to many in our community, and we can issue a proclamation or do a number of things. So I'll work with the team and follow up with you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other than that, I think my only other question was, we had originally decided at our retreat that we were going to do council comments following public comments. And I just wanted to find out when kind of the implementation date might be of that process change.
Good question. I don't, until this council acts on new procedures, I'm not changing anything with what we're doing until we all can agree that we're making those changes. So we'll have that conversation next week. We're going to talk tonight a little bit about reopening to the public, and next week we'll talk about council procedures, and we'll get that documentation down so that everybody in the public and on council understands how our procedures will run. And then as soon as we adopt those changes, then we will implement them.
Okay, thanks.
Is that all? Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that I appreciate Mayor Franklin's comments. It's really a travesty what's happening in Ukraine, and we all feel very sad by this. And so we do hope that things will resolve in a more positive way. So thank you for those sentiments. I did have we had our first housing and homelessness committee meeting last week on Thursday, and had a great update from Julie. And so we look forward to lots more things happening this year as we move forward. There wasn't, I don't think anything came out that hadn't been briefed at the council meeting, other than we were able to dig a little deeper into some of these potential projects. And so we look forward to bringing some exciting things back to council. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Good evening, everybody. I have a few things to report. I was at the Everett Housing Authority Board of Commissioners meeting, and there was a lot that went on in that meetings, and I won't go over all of it, but a couple key points were welcoming new members to the commission, so that was awesome. And staff will be returning to the office full-time in May of 2022, so coming right up. They're working towards that as we speak. And then they also passed a remote work policy, and I personally thought that it was well thought out and it was passed, and so that's just great. Also, the Alliance for Housing Affordability. I am now the chair of that committee, so yay. I feel good about that. It was a vote, so there you go. And there's going to be a lot coming out of that interlocal agreement, and just work amongst many jurisdictions. So I'm looking forward to chairing that, and I'm looking forward to bringing a lot of information back. And I know that there will be some revenue of tax parcel, per tax parcel discussion, and it's a very tricky subject and one that can be quite contentious. So that might get exciting. What else? Oh yeah, I also went to the Economic Alliance Snohomish County early morning meeting, and it was really good because that's not my forte, and so just learning more things is always good. And Women's History is now. So for all of you folks out there that are identifying as women or girls, how will you create your future history? Because there has been much and there will be more, and we are living proof for our history. So think about that, all of you. And again, with the war against Ukraine, is a travesty. And I do very much appreciate Mayor Franklin's words towards that. And I also want to mention that without being personal friends of any of our Russian immigrants and refugees and Ukrainian, we have a large Russian population as well as Ukrainian. And I know that there are Russians against Putin's war. And I also know how easily racism and the other word that doesn't have to do with race that I can't think of right now, hatred towards people just because they're a certain word or a certain type or a certain name. And be mindful that not every Russian is for this war, although it's a big deal. So love and peace to those against war. And that is all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I will also add my concern for the Ukrainian conflict and the war that is basically breaking out. And I know over the many coming weeks, months, and perhaps years, the fortitude of the Ukrainians who are showing such great courage right now will be tested. So we will have to be mindful of their plight for long beyond the time that it's in the headlines of our newspapers. I wanted to announce that there will not be a council meeting on March 16th for lack of quorum. We have several council members that are going to be at the National League of Cities meeting. And so we will use one of our days that we are not going to meet as that day. And as I mentioned, we're going to discuss a return to in-person meetings, but I'm going to first go to the update from administration because Nicole Weber is here tonight to give us some information about some of the possibilities and technical capabilities that we have as we think about returning to in-person meetings. So I'm going to allow that to happen first, and as soon as she's done with her presentation, then we will have our discussion before we move on to the rest of our agenda.
Council President Stonecipher, I told Nicole I would kind of tee this up a little bit. And as we all know, you requested last week that administration provide information tonight on a transition. Nicole Weber from our executive team, who most, if not all of you know, who did a really fantastic job leading the transition with our other team members to remote meetings, and now is continuing to lead the work transitioning back to in-person meetings. She'll walk you through a proposed plan based on really research from the team and her expertise and experiences over the last 2 years in what we are technically able to do and what in terms of staff resources we're able to do. So, Nicole?
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Council President. So thank you for having me. Basically, I'm just going to run through with you what the team has put together. There's a large group of us that work on how we communicate with the public, getting you guys on TV and YouTube and Facebook and all of those great things that we're able to do. And so I'm just going to walk through what we've developed. We started talking about this, I think, in August, and came up with a plan. Pipa and Deb and I and Lori have run a lot of tests with IT on what we think is going to be best, not only for you, but for the community watching, to make sure that their experience is as good as we can make it at home. So I'm just going to share my screen with you, put together a little PowerPoint. What do you see, Pipa?
We do have your.
You got it.
We can
Great.
see it.
Great. So this is just what I went over, like the team who worked on this, and my cover slide. So our goals for council meetings in general as staff, we want to reduce as many barriers as we can, want to be as cost effective as possible. We want to be consistent, and we want the public to be able to predict what we're doing so they can participate. We want to create as much interaction between council and staff as we can, or create very meaningful interactions so that we can answer your questions and you can ask them. We want to allow flexibility to staff presenting, that's kind of or that are not presenting. So giving staff who don't have to be at council an opportunity to participate from Zoom if they have like a consent item and there's a possibility that there's a question from one of you. And then we also wanted to allow for flexibility for the council to go virtual if you needed to make that call or decide that X amount of council meetings a year or a month would be remote. We wanted to give that to you as well. So after a lot of tests and a lot of work, we narrowed down what we think is going to be the best option, which is an full in-person regular council meeting for the council, with the opportunity for the community to give public comment and watch either via Zoom or in person. And this could also go the other way. So council could be 100% remote and the community would still be able to participate via Zoom, telephone, and the platforms that we have now. So all of you just need to be on the same platform, either all remote or all in person. And then the community will be able to access via Zoom or in person. It'll be the same process right now for public comment via Zoom, where you need to pre-register so that we can manage both our in-person commenters and our remote commenters. And it'll be a little stricter for our Zoom commenters. They really will have to be registered 30 minutes in advance. Right now, we let people come in whenever they can, and we won't be able to maintain that on the online platform, but in the in-person meetings at any time, if somebody wants to provide comment, we can accommodate that. So if you come to a meeting in person, you're not planning to speak and you change your mind, we can accommodate that. If you're watching at home and you want to participate via Zoom, we just have to take your written comments, or you could sign up for the next meeting to provide that comment. And so presenting staff will be on whatever platform you are. So if I'm giving a briefing and the council is in chambers, then I will be in chambers. And if the council's on Zoom, then I will be on Zoom. And then we'll just have the other staff kind of in the wings, as we've been saying. If they have a consent or action item, they can participate remotely and maybe catch dinner with their family on a Wednesday night or whatever they need to do. So with that, I think I can take questions or comments from all of you. And I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Great. Let's go down the roll and see who has comments at this time. First, we start with Councilmember Ryan.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm definitely really excited to come back in person. I think that there's just a different dynamic, and it'll be great to see everybody from here down. So I guess my only question, I feel like with moving past COVID and with technology and Zoom kind of opening several different doors, what are some of the enhanced opportunities that the public have to share public input?
I'm not sure what you mean by enhanced opportunities, because they'll be able to do it via email, in person, via Zoom, or they can provide comment on our website through there's a public comment like portal that they could use as well. And those are our platforms that we utilize today, except for the in-person piece, which will come back when you guys do.
Great. I always thought it'd be kind of neat to allow the public, I mean, besides an email, but to allow the public to comment not at the regularly scheduled time of the meeting. So if they could record a video that's 3 minutes long and submit it, or even like if there was like a hotline that they could leave a voicemail or something along those lines. But so I would think that like for videos, somebody could like highlight a pothole in their neighborhood that they need help with or something like that. So yeah, I'd love as much public input as we can possibly get. So any ways that we can open those doors, I'd definitely be supportive of. So appreciate everybody's hard work. Thanks.
And people can also call Deb Williams and leave a message or provide comment to her, and she will type that up and put it into an email or get that out to you as well. So that hotline piece it kind of exists through council chambers, and I'll ask the team about the videos. I think we had discussed that before, and it's just a matter of who's going to collect those, put those all together, and kind of do that work. But we'll keep it in mind as technology changes for sure, because that would be very fun to be able to allow people to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I know there's probably some data retention considerations as well.
But we can keep it. I think it's fun.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes, if you could just summarize a little bit. So you're suggesting that there will be staff persons available in person if we're having an inline or in-house, in-chambers meeting, but also make it the opportunity for other staff members to come to make comments?
Yeah, so if a staff member is giving a briefing to you, they will be in chambers. And then if there's I'll use Public Works because they have so many. If Ryan Sass has something on the consent agenda, instead of attending the whole meeting in person, he could listen via Zoom. And then if it got pulled off of consent or somebody had a question, which is pretty rare, he would be able to jump in and participate. But if you're part of the meeting, then you will be on the same platform that the council are on. Okay.
Is it your intentions that we'll have a video screen? We'll be able to observe the video or a live Zoom stream from that employee?
Yeah, so the council chambers will be set up in such a way. There's 3 cameras, or not 3 cameras, 3 screens in there. I believe one will show you what the community is seeing, so you'll be able to see yourself. One will show you one will show you the Zoom screen, and then one will show you like the presentation that staff members are providing.
Okay. Also, in your presentation, somebody could call in and do a Zoom presentation if we're live in the council chambers, or they would be required to come in?
They would be required to come in, but in theory, if there were a reason to do that, we could have staff do a Zoom presentation for you, a briefing.
Okay.
That could happen.
I think he means the general public.
I'm sorry, I meant general public.
Yeah, general public could come in, turn on their camera, and you would be able to see them on screen like you see me right now.
Okay, so with your proposal, the general public would have the option of doing a live Zoom stream or be in person.
Yep.
I guess just my comment on that is I would consider the requirement that the person from the public be able to have an active screen so we could actually see them. Just a thought. That would be my preference. So we could see
We
them.
asked that already, don't we? Do we already ask that?
We
Nicole?
ask that people do that, but some people do only have the ability right now to call in from a telephone. And so being on screen isn't an option for everyone who accesses Zoom.
Yeah, I so far I haven't seen us apply that rule, enforce it, I should say, if it's something we want to do. So that's my comments. Thank you. Thanks for your research.
Absolutely. And if that is something that you want to enforce, once we go back to in person, we would have more ability to do that because we do have to, the OPMA is a little bit different in COVID because we're using Zoom as a platform that everyone has to be able to access, which means they need to be able to provide comment and call in from a landline at the most lowest level of what we have to provide. So it's more complicated now than it could be if you wanted to choose to enforce that more heavily once we're back in person.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to hear other council input, but that would be my preference at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, actually, council members who've spoken so far have explored the issues and questions I've had very well. So no further questions from me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
I would prefer that there would be a few exceptions put in for extenuating circumstances when council members want to still be there for a vote, but say they're attending a funeral and have to go home, to take care of, some situations, but they still need to be there to represent the voice of their public, to vote on something that's very important. Or, occasionally I catch a bug from my son and I don't want to expose everybody else, but I'm okay to actually present or talk or, whatnot. So having not be a regular hybrid, type of situation with council, but for the extenuating circumstances, have an allowance for that, maybe under I don't know, president approval or something. I love the hybrid model in general for our public. I am all for, increased engagement and access. So I think that's, terrific going forward. So thank you for working so hard on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just
Councilmember Fossey, I just wanted to say that we're going to talk about council's hybrid possibilities at our procedures, because those will actually be part of our council procedures. So we're going to spend some time talking about that next week when we have that discussion. So tonight we'll probably focus more on what the public will be asked or allowed to do. Thank you. And we'll go to Councilmember Toohey.
Thank you. Good question so far. The only thing I would recommend, and Nicole, thank you for your presentation. Always, you do a great job, is that we set a timeline for where we evaluate what we do so that, we can see if it's really serving the needs of the community, or do we need to make some adjustments? That's all. That was about it. Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, and I can absolutely, maybe 6 months after we launch this, come back and talk about what we're seeing or engagement numbers that we have and things like that. Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Vogely.
Thanks. This is a big deal. And I think the biggest question is, when will we return to council chambers? Governor Inslee said masks can come off for the most part midnight of the 11th of March. And things
you're
are
queuing
different.
up my next question. Thank you.
So with all of that and all of the work that has been done, and with some more nitty gritty being worked on next week virtually, tell us, President Stonecipher, when shall we return?
I have three key topics that I wanted to get through tonight. One is timeline. When are we ready to go back? The second, just to get you the juices flowing in your brain. The other one is a question about whether we want to continue to ask for masks to be worn within the council chambers, or whether we want to make that optional. And the third really had to do with the public comment. So we've covered quite a bit of the public comment. So first, let me just throw out the timeline. Just in talking with administration, we were looking at the first meeting of April, which I believe is April 2nd or 3rd. It would be our first meeting. We're gonna, next week, we would not do it. Then we have a remote meet, or we have no meeting. Then we have our daytime meeting. We have one more nighttime meeting in March. So we could return at the March 30th meeting. I think we could probably pull it together on that date. Or we would go back on April. So the next one would be April 6th. Preferences, I'll go down the line. Well, actually, let's throw out the other question. So question has just been raised about whether we would request, require, or be silent on the question of masking in the chambers. Obviously, the governor has lifted the indoor mask mandate on the 12th of March. But like many of my clients that I work with in the day, they still get to make choices about how they are running their business on their own. So I think we certainly could do that. And I'd be interested in hearing council members' comments. So with those two questions on the line, how about if we go back down the roll and you can give me your comments on that? And that will start with Councilmember Ryan.
Great. I would vote for, my preference would be the April 6th meeting, and then yeah, masks is tough. I'd say because I feel like who knows what's going to happen a month from now. Everything just feels kind of tumultuous. I don't want to make a commitment to something and then a week beforehand have it be not in line with what the current guidelines are. So I would lean towards not requiring masks indoors and just letting it be up to an individual preference. However, I would like to request that would be evaluated on maybe a monthly basis until things are like either definitely in the clear or definitely not in the clear, just to make sure that we're staying up to date on our case counts and safety and whatnot. I think another maybe question to add on to it would be capacity limits in chambers. So if there is a hot topic and it's really crowded in there, then maybe masks would be required. But or if we would limit capacity to be able to still social distance and whatnot, then we could be a little more lenient on that. So I'd probably add that into the mix for questions. So those are my initial thoughts. Thanks.
Those are good thoughts. And I agree with you. I think everything is going to have to be subject to change because we don't know how things will unfold with this virus. And we may have to find ourselves retrenching a little bit. I want to make sure that we have the flexibility to do that. So I agree with you on that. We'll go next to Councilmember Schwab.
Yes. I suggest that we follow the guidelines of the state and the county health department and don't try to second guess our experts and base the decision on their advice and their guidelines and not try to make up our own. If the council wishes, or if there's a sense that we want to err on the safety side, then my suggestion would be that we just delay the opening of the live council for a couple of weeks.
Thank you. And timeline, did you have a comment on that?
Well, yes, I did. And that was delay it if there's any doubt that, and question that on the safety standard, I'd put it off another 1 or 2 weeks in the middle of April.
Thank you. Thank you. And Councilmember Zarlingo.
I'm so far, at least from what I've seen, the trajectory of the virus counts and the case counts and the hospitalization, I'm leaning toward the April 6th. That gives us a month or so from now to see what that trajectory is. I'm looking forward to being back in person. It's a human business we're involved in out here after all, and there's an important element of that we've been missing. But I also recognize we have a responsibility to each other and to the public. And I guess as we come forward in this, I want to look particularly at any occupancy limits we might want to impose, or perhaps a way to cycle people in and out of the chambers if we need to limit the number of people in the chambers, but still not limit the opportunity for comment. And of course, as Nicole Weber had said, having the opportunity for people to comment via Zoom or in person is another sort of relief valve or alternative that way. So I'm comfortable with the way that's going and with the issues that the other council members have raised. And other than the general aim of my own toward April 6th, I don't have anything further.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
I probably will be seconding Councilmember Schwab's advice to kind of trust expert guidance. April 6th or later is fine with me. I wanted to double check. Will we be actually providing masks for people who would like to choose to wear them at least? Okay.
The city has masks available to anyone who enters our building who wants one but doesn't have one on, and we'll have that for some time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, I would say number one, just follow the CDC, what they're saying as far as masks, and when staff feels that they are ready to roll with us, that's when I would say we're ready to be in the council chambers. I think there's some logistics that they're going to have to work through, and I want to make sure that they have enough time for that. So other than that, I'm good.
Thank you. And Nicole, we discussed either the March 30th or April 6th being reasonable timelines. Is that correct? Thank you. Councilmember Vogley.
Thanks. Let's see. In regards to masks, I do definitely want to go with the professionals. It would be really cool if we just had kind of a paradigm shift. I think I've said that a few times. And this particular paradigm is to, stay home if you're sick, or wear a mask if you think you might be. That is personal privilege and personal rights and individuality. So, if you're sick, don't show up. And this isn't work for others, for the public. So, there's no risk of getting fired for public comment. And I'm kind of, we're not like 6 or even 3 feet away from each other when we're on the dais. And so I imagine that we will be there not wearing masks, unless we feel like the sniffles or something. And I'm torn about that, because I really like to see the full face when we are discussing matters. And, if we're all wearing masks, then I don't know. So if it's safe, I think essentially as a people, we're all just done with this pandemic. And I want, and it still is a pandemic and there's still sickness, and I haven't heard any, I know that the numbers are going down and the Omicron isn't as vicious to people that have been vaccinated or have had it before. So again, but I'm not a scientist or anything. So my point is follow the expert advice and encourage healthy behaviors. And April 6th sounds good to me because it's a new month and spring has started. And yeah, unless something changes and it all goes to kapooey again.
Thank you. And for my comments, I'll say that I had suggested April 6th and March 30th. So obviously either of those dates work for me, and I'm hearing a consensus around the April 6th timeline. So I think barring any objection, we will move forward, assuming that things stay on the track that they're on for our grand reopening on April 6th. And I will work with administration to make sure we have everything in place that we need for that. And I want to say, with regard to masking, I recognize that I'm probably on the very lax end of concern about a transmission of the virus. So that's why I always ask other people, because I know that I don't always reflect what people are feeling. So I'm grateful to hear that most feel like we should follow the state or CDC guidelines. I'll work with administration to figure out, is it the local Department of Health, the state Department of Health, the CDC, the state government? I mean, there are many. It used to be that all these guidelines were in sync with one another, and there has been over the last several weeks a real divergence of that kind of guidance. So we will figure out which of those guidelines we will be using as our point of reference. And I'll also get into the council chambers with Deb Williams and take a look at our setup there. It's possible that we could, if council members felt like they would like to start out at least this way, we could get some plexiglass dividers between our desks at the chamber and in the chambers. We'd still be able to see one another, but it would provide a little bit of a buffer if we're leaning next door. As someone pointed out, we're probably about 2 feet away from each other there. So if we wanted to do that, and if that would make others feel comfortable rather than feeling like they need to wear a mask. But otherwise, if a council member felt like they wanted to wear a mask, I would say that that is their choice at any time. Liz, I saw your hand go up. I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. Mary, somebody had mentioned, high capacity interest in a certain thing. And I remember from being in chambers previously, it would be super helpful if we could fix the speakers to the hallway, because I believe they were not functional. And then maybe also put a couple screens out there and set it up so that council can not only be heard, but also seen. So people don't have to feel like they have to smush into council chambers. Yeah, that is what I have. And I know we have at least some black and white TVs with some VCR capabilities downstairs. So, I mean. Yeah. I think I'm gonna, Mayor, I see that you would like to speak, but let me ask first of all, if David Hall, City Attorney, can you help me remember, David, are we able to limit the number of people who can enter the chambers as long as we allow them in to speak, if we have some kind of system for them to get up and speak?
Well, as long as they're able to attend, they need to be able to watch too. So I think having them in the hallway, frankly, I'm not sure if being there and listening but not being able to see them counts as being able to attend. I'd want to take a look at the regulations.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a look at that. In the old days when we used to do a lot of land use matters in city council, we could get packed crowds and spill out into the hallways, and that's why those old TVs were there on the rolly carts. But people would be out in the hallway and they would come in to speak when they were called upon, if they were signed up. But I just don't know if that's allowed. We were doing it, but it doesn't mean it's the best practice. So we'll have to look into that. Thank you. Mayor Franklin.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to share that plexiglass or additional screens out in the hallway, those were not factored into the timeline that you're working from right now. So if those are requests that you have prior to going in person, we will need a longer timeline. We'll have to have a conversation with facilities team, and they'll have to evaluate how to do that. So just wanted to have that flexibility if that is a request from this group. Thank you.
Okay. Good to know. Any other questions or comments?
With respect to the questions about the plexiglass and all that, I've seen some studies on that, and it's complicated as to whether it helps very much or not. Some of it depends on how long the virus particles are viable in the air, and recent research is kind of encouraging. Earlier research was pretty pessimistic about the benefits of the plexiglass. I don't really know, but if if we're in kind of one of those back and forth iterative situations with respect to when we return and when the plexiglass would be available, it may be a possibility to just watch how this goes over the next several weeks with the provisional assumption that we wouldn't be doing plexiglass. And if it turns out that the best research and the timing and the virus variants are unfavorable and we think plexiglass is a good idea, then we push in-person attendance back out several weeks with a new estimate of when we'd be doing the plexiglass. That might allow us then to proceed forward on the current schedule and simply push that back if we can't meet it and if we need to get the plexiglass.
That sounds reasonable. Councilmember Ryan.
Yeah, just a follow-up comment about capacity in the chambers. My assumption is that the health district or the Washington State Department of Health might have some guidelines as well for capacity in small spaces, particularly after the mask mandates are lifted. So I would also venture to guess that when Governor Inslee does change the OPMA requirements, that there might be some guidelines that they'll share as well. So that might be another decision that we don't necessarily have to make specific to our chambers.
Yes, and I think there's some guidance coming out, I know at least for schools this week, so it's possible we'll get a little more information for other industries as well. Any last comments before we move on? I think we've got what we need. Very good. Okay, we will move on next to City Attorney comments. Mr. Hall, do you have anything for us this evening?
I don't have anything to report tonight, and there is no executive session. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Williams, have we received any comments from the community for public comment?
Good evening, President Stonecipher. We received one written comment from Mr. Roy Holman, which I have provided to administration of the clerk to be part of the permanent record, and we have no one wishing to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to our consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the 5 consent items?
Councilmember Ryan so moves.
Do I hear a second?
Vogely seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
You know, I've asked for a minute or so before my vote to make a comment about one item that I thought deserved a bit of highlight for anybody who watches this meeting, and that is about the Jetty Island Days. Everett's Parks and Facilities Department is partnering with the Port of Everett and Snohomish County to host Jetty Island Days again this year. It's a very modest spending. Funding from the county will allow us all to take advantage of Jetty Island. You know, if you haven't been there, it's a unique Everett feature that I've kayaked around many times and have visited once as part of Jetty Island Days with my daughter and my wife. And the island is part of a century-old man-made project associated with the creation of a channel for the Snohomish River that didn't go exactly as planned because the river kept breaching the north end, but it left us with a new island that has both wildlife habitat and recreational opportunities. And I'd like to say to you and any of the public who are watching that if you can make it, to the tide flats on the west side of Jetty Island during an incoming tide on a warm summer afternoon, it's probably the only chance you'll ever have to wade or swim in a portion of Puget Sound that's comfortably warm. Jetty Island Days is going to include guided nature walks, educational programs, arts and craft events, campfires, and I'd like to thank those who made this possible in the city and the county. The amount of memorable fun and educational experiences that the city gets for each dollar is really impressive. And it's a tourism related activity and a great opportunity to show some of the best of Everett to your out of town visitors, whether you get there via Jetty Island Days or your own boat or a chartered boat. So I thought that really excellent opportunity and excellent use of public funds and public resources ought not to go without comment. So sorry for the interruption, but yes, an enthusiastic yes on these items.
thank you, Councilmember Zarlingo. Councilmember Fosse,
I have a question, but it will not affect my vote. Can I ask it after the vote tally is taken? Yes.
Yes, you may.
Okay, yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
President Stone Cipher.
Yes. And Councilmember Fosse, your question?
One of the consent items about the grant agreement with the Department of Ecology, I had previously had asked about the MOTCA funding arrangement and where we kind of stood on that. I was wondering how this particular item fell into that scope, or the background of it, maybe where it came from, if there was any detail that you could provide on that one.
Yeah, good evening, Ryan Sass with Public Works. I'd be happy to comment on that. I did contact the state MOTCA program manager for the Everett smelter site recently, and they do anticipate resuming the private property cleanups during this coming year. They've been delayed somewhat by COVID, but they are resuming those cleanups, and they'll be contacting the property owners who have parcels that will be scheduled for cleanup. This particular project is a little bit unique in that it's a city facility, it's a city drainage pipe, and it was on the list of things for ecology to do. They asked if we would run the project and they would pay 100% of the cost since it was our facility anyway. And the intent of the project is to put a cured in place pipeliner into an existing pipe that is not of great integrity, and the purpose is to prevent infiltration of soil contamination to get into the pipe and therefore make its way to the Snohomish River. And so Everett's taking the project on since it's our drainage pipe, and ecology is paying 100% of the cost.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to our proposed action and briefing items. And these are both, let's see. Oh, we have I'm sorry, council item number 6, Council Bill 2202-05, second reading and briefing, adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Citywide Bicycle Wayfinding, Fund 303, Program 126. And the third and final reading will be on March 9th. And I believe Tom Hood, is Tom Hood here to do the presentation? Or is that you, Ryan?
Yeah, I've got a few comments and then I'll turn it over
Thank
to
you.
Tom. And we're prepared to provide a briefing on both items 6 and 7. So the Everett Bicycle Master Plan was completed, adopted by the Planning Commission and City Council in 2011. It was the result of extensive outreach and participation with our bicycle community. It provides framework for the continuous implementation of project elements toward the goal of a robust network of bicycle transportation facilities and improvements. The Bike Master Plan was prepared by Alta Planning and Design, city staff, and our stakeholders, and it's intended for continuous implementation. It's not a plan for sitting on the shelf. Everett's been diligently looking for grant funds, incorporating bike improvements into our maintenance activities, and implementing the plan with projects large and small. Mayor Franklin's been a strong supporter of the program throughout and has consistently ensured that implementation of the Bike Master Plan is a top priority in the delivery of our transportation program. I'd like to have Tom Hood, our city engineer, join us, and he'll provide a short overview of the 2 projects that are the subject of these 2 funding ordinances. Tom?
All right, thank you, Ryan, and
Thanks.
good evening, everyone.
Tom, let me read item 7 as well, so we have them both on the table here before your
Sure.
briefing. Item 7 is Council Bill 2202-06, also second reading and briefing, adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Fulton Street Bicycle Pedestrian Corridor, Fund 303, Program 125. And again, this will also be a third reading and final action on the 9th. Okay, Tom, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. President Stonesteifer, shall I put these 2 briefings together and do a single Q&A at the end then?
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay, great. I am going to share my screen if I may. Okay, I presume you can see that. All right. So as the name implies on this first project, the citywide bicycle wayfinding project, this public works project will install bicycle wayfinding signs and pavement markings at a number of locations throughout the city's bicycle network. The city's bicycle master plan recommends utilizing these wayfinding signs and markings and highlights two significant benefits of wayfinding. First, these types of installations help familiarize the users with the network and identify best routes and distances to various destinations within the bike network. And there's a few examples of what we're talking about here on the right-hand side of the screen with those wayfinding sign examples that will be used. The other benefit of wayfinding programs are that they enhance cyclist safety by alerting motorists to the fact that they are driving along a bicycle corridor and that they are likely to encounter a non-motorized user. So you can see from the graphic that we have a very broad distribution of signs and markings planned throughout the city. The intent is to locate this wayfinding at major intersections of bike facilities within the network, major decision points within the network. And the project will enhance 9 established bike routes, including 9 intersections with the interurban trail. The city received a state grant to install these facilities through WashDOT's Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Program. The grant's paying 90% of the $415,000 estimated cost, requiring only a 10% local match. And we anticipate construction in the first half of 2023. So that is the wayfinding project. I'm going to roll up. And next I'll talk about the Fulton Street Bicycle Pedestrian Corridor. This is kind of just an overview map, but it's important to talk about some of the adjacent projects that we're working on for the non-motorized system as well. But this particular project will make non-motorized improvements to Fulton Street between California and Pacific and continues the city's build out of our bicycle network. So this project fits in well with other nearby non-motorized amenities that we have in various phases of implementation. The California Street Bicycle Corridor is probably the preeminent one right now, and that's moving from Broadway over to Maple and then a connection to the US-2 trail here. That's currently at about 15% design. We also have the Baker Bicycle Corridor that's being implemented. Here's Baker right here. We're implementing that starting up at 12th Street and gradually moving south. Eventually that corridor will link up with California Street as well. That'll then provide a connection here to Fulton. And then we also have a planned ped and bike facility to connect Everett Station to the Angel of the Winds Arena here, that's funded by PSRC, I'm sorry, funded by Sound Transit money. That's also beginning design in the near future. And then finally, we also have the upcoming I-5 US-2 Interchange study, in which we are pushing heavily for a non-motorized connection directly to the California Street Bike Corridor as part of identifying improvements to that interchange in the future. So the Fulton Corridor itself is identified in the Bicycle Master Plan as a signing and pavement marking project, but Public Works was successful in securing a significant federal grant to allow us to expand the scope of this project significantly. The scope now includes bike-only pathways and additional sidewalk along the Fulton corridor, as well as some bicycle crossing enhancements at the signalized intersections of Fulton with Hewitt and Fulton with Pacific. So the grant supplies $1 million of the estimated $1.35 million project cost, and we anticipated construction in 2024. So with that, I'm happy to field any questions anyone might have.
Great. Thank you. And let's go down the roll and see what questions we have. We will start with Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. Yeah, I had a lot of questions last week when this first came on the agenda, mostly just what do the signs look like? Where are they going to be? How many are there? What directions are they pointing to? What are the landmarks they're going to be highlighting? So appreciate the input on that. I counted 9 signs from the map. Do I have that correct?
That is, those are, I think there's just 4 there, and then a pavement marking, and that's just a representative sample. We have, I don't know how many signs are actually planned, but it's 9 bicycle routes. And so there's probably many signs on each route. Each one will be identifying the major destinations throughout the city.
I thought on the first map there it said wayfinding sign with like pointing to different places on the map.
Let me pull this up.
I counted 9, but I was squinting at my screen, so I might have missed some.
Let me zoom in a little bit as well. Okay. Okay. So yeah, these are the oh, so you're referring to, yeah, the actual call outs, wayfinding signage. I think that those may be, yeah, those are the decision points and destination areas. So there may be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are probably multiple signs at each installation, I'm guessing, depending on which direction you're going on the route. And there's probably multiple destinations that may need to be called out, which you can kind of see in the example we're doing where there's 2, we'll do it on a single sign. But I can get more details on the actual number of signs. I just don't have that in front of me.
Sure, yeah, that'd be great. I'd be curious to know the total number of signs. And then is the design for the signs, is this the final design or is that still TBD?
I would say that this is likely, we're bound by the manual of uniform traffic control devices, so we don't have a whole lot of latitude to do a whole lot of different things. So I would say that what you see here is likely the very close to what you'll see when we actually install them.
Sure, yeah, I know the city went through a lot of work to do the branding revamping the last few years. So if there is any latitude to incorporate the rebranding, I think that'd be great just to help with celebrating our wonderful city. And then another question that I had about both of the proposed ordinances was how it fits into the overall bicycle master plan. So I know it was passed in 2011. So is there a timeline for when there might be an update to it, or if because I'm sure there's been a couple of changes in Everett since 2011. So I was wondering if there's conversations about an update to it, or what the timeline is for that document.
Yeah, the bicycle master plan, in terms of routes and things, I think is still a very solid plan. There are some things that we can look at in a refresh of it, such as some design standards and things like that. Both of these projects are mentioned in the bicycle master plan as something that we would want to do to build out our network and to sign it appropriately. In terms of looking at the BMP itself, I think it makes a lot of sense to go through the comprehensive plan update with the transportation element first, which is getting underway with planning and public works shortly. And then following that, update the master plan, the bike master plan accordingly.
Okay, great. And then my last question was about the Fulton Street project. So it goes, in the map, it shows that it's going from Pacific to California. Will there be an opportunity to extend those plans then past Everett Avenue? Like, that's such a busy intersection, having a safe crossing for bicyclists to move across that major arterial, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, the the Baker corridor that I mentioned, which is 1 block west of Fulton here, is the planned bicycle route to bring down. That crossing at Everett Avenue will be something that we'll be looking at in the future as we're able to make that. You know, right now we're trying to get across 16th at Baker. That's our next challenge, and then we'll have 23rd, and then Everett Avenue will be the next one that we'll be looking at trying to make a safe crossing for.
Great. So then would it connect on California there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, people would jog east a block on California, and then they could use Fulton to get down to Pacific.
Okay, great. And then, sorry, remind me again, when they do get to Pacific, what are some other bicycle option destinations when they get to that point? What is that?
Well, you'll have, of course, Everett Station to the west. You'll have to go over the bridge, obviously, and then you'll be at Everett Station. With the planned Wall Street connector up to Angel of the Winds here, you'll have that ability to make that route if you want. And then I think from there, that's probably the only destinations we have in this immediate area. In the bigger area, we have the connection at Highway 2 out here on California. We have the Milltown Trail. And then you'll have to move west of Broadway to get on to another bicycle, north-south bicycle route at that point.
Great. One more question, and then I promise I'll pass the mic. Oh shoot, I forgot my question. Well, I'll just share that I'm definitely really supportive of enhancements to our built environment just to protect our bicyclists and our pedestrians. I'm really glad to see these projects, and I do think that being able to prioritize projects as they fit under the bicycle master plan is really important just for a comprehensive approach to folks using non-motorized options to get around the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
No, I don't have anything to add right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yeah, well, one of the questions I think you've mostly answered when I first read about the specifics of Fulton Street a couple of weeks ago. I wondered why specifically there and that limit on that location, but it sounds like that serves as kind of a nexus for a bunch of other connections there, kind of a connecting an area that otherwise would be separated, and getting around things like the obstructions in the Baker Street, like the Lowe's store. The Lowe's store. So I'll assume that's answered that way. Let me know if I'm misinterpreting that. One of the questions I had was, is this also going to be for e-bikes or scooters, as those things get more common, less expensive, and a little more capable? So that's a question I have. And then I guess one thing that occurs to me is that getting successful bicycling around here is a bit of a chicken and egg thing, where you want more bicyclists out there so that drivers come to expect them and can avoid them, and more with more drivers expecting and avoiding cyclists, making the cyclists cycling safer and more hospitable. So I suppose there's probably an obligation on the part of us, the council and the city, to do some publicity to increase awareness, promoting these bicycle paths and links, because I don't think there's enough awareness of even what's there now. So I guess that's kind of a tickler for me for the future, to focus on more as we get these connections improved. But the question was, is this also for things like the e-bikes and scooters?
Yeah, I think it certainly could be. I mean, an e-bike operates much like a regular bicycle, albeit with potentially higher speeds. but the intent is to provide an on-street bicycle lane on Fulton that certainly would be compatible with an e-bike use.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilmember Fossey.
Well, Councilmember Ryan asked all my questions, so perhaps you could maybe follow up with me later about efforts that are going on and what's planned for 16th Street. You don't have to do it in this arena, but I would love an update, maybe over email. Thank you. And this is so exciting. Thank you for all your work on it. And grants, yay.
Yeah, we do like grants.
Yes. Councilmember Tui.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Tom, for the presentation and update.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Thanks. I like hearing your voice, Tom, because it reminds me of the Transportation Advisory Committee meetings, and I'm probably going to miss that next one. So they talk a lot about really awesome things, and I know Christina has a lot of really great information. So if any of you want to jump on the chance to go to a TAC meeting, because I won't be able to make it, just let me know later. And at a TAC meeting, and here when we were talking about the DOT, and yes, I'm getting to bicycles, talking about the DOT I-5 North boondoggle that's going to be occurring sometime in the near future. There was mention of putting like cement barriers and stuff and making it difficult for cars to want to go through our neighborhood streets to try to get around the melee on I-5. So I bring that up because I thought about wayfinding, and this is in the planning stages, and so that's where it's coming around to, you know, what we're talking about tonight. But specifically, and I don't know if it was on this map, but could we pilot a project or put it into the planning just to put like those cement barriers that the city and other folks have as, you know, barriers? They're all like covering Silver Lake parking lot, just in random specific places around the city. And the one that I think of the most is 112th and Silver Lake, you know, so you're turning east. I don't know my directions very well. And I don't know if that's a DOT street or if it's an Everett street, but just putting, because cars, you know, take out bicyclists right there all the time at that turn, and making it really uncomfortable for cars to, well, people driving cars and then like scratching them. I know the floppy things don't work. So I'm putting that out there because I've been wanting to say it out loud in public for quite some time. And since it's in the design situation, I know there's many more options out there to make cars uncomfortable and safe, and infrastructure that's ugly, but maybe it could be green, safer for bicyclists and pedestrians so they don't get ran over. Council member, I believe, if I understand correctly, you're talking about WashDOT's pavement, concrete pavement project that they have coming up. That is the melee that I'm speaking of. To reduce the number of lanes. Our traffic division certainly is looking, you know, and we'll work closely with WashDOT to try to mitigate the impact as that constraint happens. And again, most of that will be in weekends and nights, but nonetheless, there will be impacts. And you know, putting physical barriers in is not simply done just in that we can also create hazards by doing it. But I'm sure Corey and cars, sorry, or anybody that runs into them. But, I know Corey's intending to work closely with WashDOT to come up with signing and some partial street closures as needed to mitigate the impacts of WashDOT's project. I mean, yes, I wasn't trying to talk specifically about that project, but that's just what came to my mind. And so making it safer and a few barriered bicycle pathways. That's just putting it out there in public. Let's create some space that is offensive to cars. I drive a car. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Vogely. I don't really have any questions. Tom, thanks so much for the presentation. I'm really happy to see the wayfinding signage. I am not an avid bicyclist, but I at one point tried to get my bike down onto the interurban, and it was a little bit puzzling to me, and I had to stop and use my phone to kind of find out what the cult bicyclists had to say about getting around the city. I did find my way there, but it was not as easy. So I'm really happy to see that the signage is coming on, and that we're getting one of these connections on with the Fulton Street piece. And so I think what I'm hearing is there may be an opportunity to have a brief update or a briefing about sort of what the kind of some of the big picture piece of the bicycle plan is. It doesn't seem like there's any urgency to that, but it would be, I think, a good refresher, because I can't exactly remember the pieces, and I'm sure we've filled in a lot of them. So it might be time for us to think about getting, again, a brief update on the bicycle plan and sort of what's in it, what has been accomplished, and what the next priorities are, and what we're looking for funding for, if we can get that on the agenda in the next few months. So I'll work with administration on that, see if we can get it. It doesn't have to be anything too comprehensive, but I think probably it's been many years. Probably I was here in 2011. That's probably the last time I read the bicycle plan. And so it'd be nice to get an update for us. With that, it looks like these will be on our agenda on the 9th. And so Tom, we will see you back at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our action item. Item 8, Council Bill 2202-04, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Water Filtration WFP Portal 4 Improvements Fund 336 Program 018, and repealing ordinance number 3800-21. Do I hear a motion?
Vogely so moves.
Zarlingo seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We'll go down the roll to see if there are any questions. Councilmember Ryan.
No comments or questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
A visit to this essential facility showed me how essential it is, and no questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
No questions or comments, thank you.
Councilmember Toohey.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Vogely.
I'd like to say no questions or comments, but I'd also like to be snarky and try to take up another 20 minutes. But I won't. No questions or comments.
And I have no questions or comments. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey,
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 9, adopt resolution concerning the 2022 Community Development Block Grants, Home 2060 Affordable Housing Trust Fund allocations, and annual action plan. Do I hear a motion?
Vogely so
Zarlingo approves
moves.
to adopt the resolution.
And Vogely seconds.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? We'll go down the roll. Councilmember Ryan.
Thrilled to support this today. No other comments or questions. No, thanks.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple questions. One is this whole funding process that we're going through as far as receiving and distributing. This is part of a supplemental portion of the budget. Is that correct? The city budget?
Hi, this is Kimber Landry.
Yeah.
Or
Oh,
Lori.
You're fine. We'll tag team it. Do you want to
Okay.
respond? I think the short answer, Councilmember Schwab, is that it is incorporated into the budget. It's not
Yeah.
an additional supplemental budget. So it was approved with the 2022 budget.
And
Kimber, anything else to add real quick?
No.
And so it's subject to the state auditors, the process of receiving and distributing their dollars, right?
Correct.
And then and if you can just give a really short answer about loans and how that works. And there's various qualifications I see, subject matters that the loans, are they actually a loan? And who processes those?
Is there a specific project that you're looking at?
Well, I was just looking at the Community Housing Improvement Program, loans to conduct home improvement projects for low-income homeowners. Great concept, but I mean, who administers and manages the loans, and are they actually a loan?
Yeah, good question. So that is our CHIP program. CHIP has been part of the city since the 1970s. So it is a program that we do where we have a low-income homeowner is able to apply, and if they qualify, they have to have certain income thresholds that they need to meet, equity in the home, things like that. Then we provide a loan that is deferred, 3% simple interest. We work with a loan review committee that helps to overview the loans and give approval for that. And they, depending on the amount, it's for a certain period of time. And then once, of course, that loan comes due, then it goes back into the pool for the funds and it has to go back out for the same purpose. So it's basically a revolving loan program. When we get the loan payoff, it goes back out into the community for that exact same program.
And that was my second question, is where if it cycles through. Thank you. That's no further questions.
Yeah. Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
No other questions or comments.
Councilmember Fossey.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Tui.
No questions or comments.
Councilmember Vogely.
Been not on mute this whole time. Tenant-based rental assistance, number 2 in home, funds to provide rental assistance to low-income households, agency to be determined in coordination with Snohomish County Human Services. Is there a timeline for that? Like when the agency will be determined and how quickly people can get rental assistance? Because wow, it's desperately needed, as I'm sure most of you know.
Yeah, so that is actually a relationship that is handled by the Snohomish County Human Service Department. Typically in the past, they've worked with an agency such as the YWCA in allocating those funds and getting those dollars out. They handle that subrecipient relationship for us, and that's part of our agreement that we've established with them. This program year is still going to be, for the home funds, it's still going to be the same as it is for the CDBG funds. So we're looking at the earliest it might be available for use is July 1st, depending on how the county is working with their home contracts. So.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thanks. Thank you. And I have no further questions. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We've come to the end of our agenda for the evening. As noted at the start of the meeting and provided on the screen, you may contact Deb Williams in the council office for instructions on watching, listening to, or participating in the, oh, I lost my screen here. In the council meeting. She can be reached by phone at 425-257-8703 or by email at dwilliams@everettwa.gov. With no further business and no executive session, we are now adjourned.